Do you guys want to play a little science game with your breath and your mind? Well, today is your lucky day because I'm going to digest and vomit out a report from Cell Reports Medicine called Brief Structured Respiration Practices Enhance Mood and Reduce Physiological Arousal. And where'd you all go? This is going to be fun. Come on. It's fun. Let's talk science. This is that freaking paper study thing done by Andrew Huberman that he talks about sometimes using the physiological sigh and that you can play with too. So listen in to learn all about this report. It was already 2 years old. I'm a bit late on this one. How you can improve your body and mind, your mood and your physiology and all of that using the breath and using mindfulness practices. How to meditate or breathe your way into a better brain. Today, let's talk about how we can use our breath to decrease our anxiety, decrease physiological arousal, improve our mood, make us feel calmer. I'm taking all of this information from a paper that was published in Cell Reports Medicine on January 17th, 2023. The lead author and contact was, Andrew Huberman. He's talked about this study on his podcast, and I'm going to go into more details about it here. And yes, while it's interesting and important to look at the science, the data, the results from this study, my favorite part of it was just, here are these 3 breathing practices: physiological sighing, box breathing, and cyclic hyperventilation. And here's a mindfulness meditation practice. Here's how they work. Here's how you do them. And then, there's these 108 participants in the study who did these things. Well, each person did a different one, and then they compared all the people together and see, okay, how do the data line up? That's all cool. I like that. That's great. And there are certain results from that, namely saying that the physiological sigh or the cyclic sigh, the Andrew Huberman sigh breathing pattern that he's obsessed with, and that it is quite nice. That is most powerful in enhancing your mood and reducing physiological arousal and basically making you feel better and healthier, presumably. That's great. And the other breathing practices also, box breathing and cyclic hyperventilation, those also improved everything more so than the mindfulness meditation. So the breathing basically was more powerful than the mindfulness meditation in terms of reducing our anxiety and physiological arousal and increasing our mood and making us feel better, blah, blah, blah. But the mindfulness meditation also did improve everything. So better than nothing, but better than mindfulness meditation is the breathing practices. And if you're going to choose one specific breathing practice of these 3, then the physiological sigh is the most powerful. That's great. But there are limits to the studies. Everyone's different, so there's only 108 people. You're not one of them. So what I would do is just I'm going to explain these different exercises, how to do them. You do them. You've probably already done them before. It's not like they're secrets or nothing. And then see how you feel. Forget about this data. But you might be interested in how other people reacted to it, so I will talk about that. So let's get to the most important part. How do these different breathing thingies work? Actually, first let's look at the mindful meditation practice that the participants were given and one that you can try. All of these exercises were done for 5 minutes. So people would set a timer for 5 minutes. They would be told to either sit down in a chair, or if they want, they could lie down. So sit in a chair or lie down, whichever you prefer. Set a timer for 5 minutes. This is the case for, the mindfulness meditation exercise, but the same goes for these breathing exercises that I will also talk about in a second. And doing this every day, presumably for 28 days. That's at least how long they did it in this study. Not everyone necessarily did it every day because it was done remotely at home and self-reported, and there's no way to really know if they really did it or not or whatever. But they did fill out a questionnaire at the end of each session, and that would basically mark whether they had done it or not. Some people did it for 18 out of 20 days. Some people did it all the 28 days, whatever. For you, do it however much you can. It could be for 1,000 days or 2 days, whatever. Anyway, so the mindful meditation practice is basically, sit in that chair, lie down, close your eyes for 5 minutes each day, and just breathe normal. You're not going to be deliberately actively changing your breath with this mindful meditation practice. You're more just going to focus your attention on a particular region of your body, in this case, the forehead, right behind your eyes. So think of like that third eye, that thing you see in Indian folklore, or actually on people's heads sometimes. So yeah, put your attention at that little spot behind your eyes, and if it kind of wanders away, redirect it and just focus your attention on that little spot between your eyes on your forehead. Yeah, your focus might drift away, but just recenter it, put it back. So you're kind of controlling your attention, but you're not controlling your breath. Yeah, thoughts might arise. That's normal. Just keep trying to get back to that center spot between your eyes on your forehead. And then do that for 5 minutes, and that's it. As it turns out, this did decrease anxiety for people in the study. I don't know how you're going to feel. It'll probably decrease anxiety. It'll also increase your mood. Interestingly, it did not decrease the negative moods, anger and sadness and depression or whatever, negative affect. And that's also the case with the breathing practices. They didn't, according to the self-reports through the questionnaires that the participants were given, the breathing exercises did not actively change their negative states. But yeah, all of these things did improve the positive mood and decrease anxiety and decrease physiological arousal, measured by the decreased breath rate. And this is all done through a Whoop strap that the participants were given. You don't have that one, probably. But you might have a Fitbit, you might have an Apple Watch, or you have your own interoception, your own awareness of how you're feeling or whatever. Anyway, forget about the data, forget about the results. That's the practice. So yeah, close your eyes, set a timer for 5 minutes or whatever, or don't. Just chill for however long you want to chill for, and focus your attention on a certain specific region of your body. In this case, that area in between your eyes, basically the third eye. Okay, now the breathing practices. Sorry if I'm just kind of like listing this out, but like I said, this is probably the most important, interesting part of this whole thing. Is like, okay, here's a description of the breathing protocols. Here's the description of the mindful meditation technique, because that we can take away. That we can trust. We can trust our own experience from these things. And I'll get into a little bit later, but yeah, can we really trust the self-reports? Can we trust this data from these people? There's also like, certain motives in place, who funded this thing, who wrote it, who are the participants, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, let's look at what we can trust, the actual breathing protocols themselves. Okay, so first we're going to look at the winner, the champion of this whole experiment. No surprise, it's Andrew Huberman's baby, the cyclic sigh, or the physiological sigh. You've probably heard about this already before, but I'm just going to go explain it for you, just in case. Same deal. Participants were informed to sit down in a chair or lie down if they wanted to do that instead. Set a timer for 5 minutes. So that's what you can do. Sit in your chair, lie down for 5 minutes, and inhale slowly. Make sure your lungs are expanded. And then inhale again, just sneak in a little bit extra air. So fill your lungs up. And that's done through your nose, ideally. And then slowly and fully exhale the breath through the mouth. So yeah, the inhales both done through the nose, and the exhale done through the mouth. But I mean, if you can't, or you don't want to, or whatever, there's no rules really. You can breathe however you want. Do it all through your nose or whatever. But if you're going to have to choose between the nose and the mouth, yeah, choose the nose. And that's what the paper said too. Ideally, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, at least in the case of the physiological sigh. And yeah, the second inhale is going to be a lot shorter because you've already kind of filled up your lungs. You can't squeeze in much more air, but yeah. And then just kind of repeat that for 5 minutes. So it's actually kind of no surprise that was a winner. Like even just doing 3 or 4 of those is quite powerful. 5 minutes, dude, I don't know. And doing it for 28 days. So yeah, this was the most powerful one in this study. And then the longer the participants adhered to the protocol, the more days they did it. As the days went on, the positive effects from this increased, which was the case for the other breathing exercises and the mindfulness meditation as well. But the change was more dramatic. The improvements were more pronounced with the cyclic sighing, the physiological sigh. And then after the 5 minutes or however long you want to do it, just breathe normally, you're done. And yeah, do that every day for 28 days. Now we got box breathing. Box breathing takes each of these components or stages of the breath, the inhale, the hold, and the exhale, followed by hold, followed by repeat. So this box, inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and each of those sections is equal in time. So you might have 4 seconds of inhale, 4 seconds of holding your breath, 4 seconds of exhale, 4 seconds of holding, and on and on. And it doesn't have to be 4 seconds. It could be 6 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds. And what they did in this study and what you could do to determine how many seconds each line of that box should be is you can check your CO2 tolerance through a CO2 tolerance test. And that's exactly what the participants in this study did. And how do you do that? Well, first you could probably get a good idea. You probably have a good idea of when things get too uncomfortable, how much you can tolerate CO2, aka how long you can hold your breath for without freaking out, or how long it takes you to exhale your air. So yeah, there's a little test for this. Basically what you do is there's 5 steps. First, take in 4 breaths. An inhale, followed by an exhale. That's 1 breath. Ideally, this is all done through the nose. And then after those 4 breaths, now we're going to do it. You breathe in the maximum amount of air as you can. Just take a big, deep breath. Get your lungs all deep and expanded and full. And yes, that's done through your nose. And then exhale the air as slowly as possible through your nose or through your mouth. And you're going to need a timer for this. So basically, after taking that big, deep breath, click start on the timer and start exhaling and do it as slowly as possible. Try to just kind of like let the air fall out as slowly as possible. You want it to take longer time. Oh, it is what it is. But time out how long it takes for all the air to get out to where there's, your lungs are empty. And then, stop the timer and see how many seconds have elapsed, how long it takes for you to empty your lungs. And that is your CO2 discard duration. So once your lungs are empty, there's no more air, stop the clock, that's it. It's okay if it's only 15 or 20 seconds. That's what it is. You can improve this through various exercises, which we're not going to explain today. But yeah, it might be just 20 seconds. It might be as long as 80 seconds. Everyone's going to be different. But depending on how long it is, that's going to determine the ratios or the numbers for that box breathing. How long your inhales, exhales, and breath holds should be for the box breathing protocol. How they instructed the participants in this study was if your CO2 discard time was between 0 and 20 seconds, then your inhales, exhales, and breath holds should be 3 to 4 seconds. So let's say 3 seconds in, 3 seconds hold, 3 seconds out, 3 seconds hold. That'll be like if you're really weak, if your CO2 tolerance is just not very great. And then if your timer stopped at between 25 and 45 seconds, then your inhales, exhales, and breath holds should be 5 to 6 seconds. So you can have a box measured with 5s or 6s. And then if you got really good CO2 tolerance, if that discard time was between 50 and 75 seconds, then the box would be bigger, longer lines. Your inhales, exhales, and breath holds would be between 8 to 10 seconds. So, wow, on the far extreme of this, if you just don't have much CO2 tolerance, you get out of breath easily, you can't hold your breath, then yeah, keep it short. Just 3 seconds in, 3 seconds hold, 3 seconds out, 3 seconds hold. And then if you're like super athlete, Olympic man, then 10 seconds. So you'll do this all with 10-second increments. 10 seconds in, inhale, 10 seconds hold, 10 seconds out, 10 seconds hold. That's the extreme version of this. And I guess it could get longer, technically, but those are the instructions they gave the participants in the study. And those are the ones you could do as well. So yeah, equal lengths, equal durations in terms of holding your breath, inhaling, and exhaling. This was more powerful in terms of decreasing anxiety and physiological arousal and improving mood than was the mindful meditation exercise that we previously just talked about. But they both helped. And more so than this box breathing was the physiological sigh. That was the winner. But like I said, do all these yourself and figure out how you work. Take that sample size of one. I mean, we got 108 people doing these over here, and we got you over here. Everyone's different. Which are you going to trust? Your own body, your own experience, or these 108 random people who got a free fitness tracker, a Whoop band with a year subscription to go in the study, and they could stay home and do this, and they just kind of go through a questionnaire and do it each day, and they get this free wristband that these fancy Stanford students, all of them were taken from a psychology class. A couple of people were from word of mouth, but yeah, I mean, I'll do it. Give me a little cool piece of tech, and I'll do your little experiment. Sounds fun. Sounds worth it. You aren't one of those people. You might be very similar to them. You might be very different. I mean, also part of this was they excluded certain people from the group, from the study, which is pretty standard for safety and health reasons, etc. Yeah, everyone had to be 18. Everyone had to know enough English in order to, do all the consent forms and the surveys and questionnaires that were involved. I mean, a lot of this data, some of it is physiological data tracked by the Whoop band, the heart rate variability, the sleep data, the breath rate, which is based off heart rate. That's all there. But then a lot of the data was just self-reported. They would log into the system on the Stanford website and just go through these little questionnaires before and after the exercise each day. So that's cool, but I mean, it's not super rigorous. And this wasn't supposed to be a rigorous study anyway. The main reason they were doing it was, they wanted to see how these breathing practices differ from mindfulness meditation, because there haven't been a lot of studies on that. We know how breathing works through various studies done in the past on humans and on animals, but there's not a lot in terms of how did these specific breathing protocols change our physiology, our mood, our brain. So this is sort of like a little sampler. They're kind of testing it out. But most importantly, they were kind of saying, how can we do a remote study? This is in the middle of the COVID pandemic. It was like summer of 2020. They found all the participants remotely. It was all the communication was done remotely through email, etc. They shipped these Whoop bands to the people. They collected the data via these questionnaires and through the data directly from the Whoop band. And that was it. So kind of testing out how can we, as scientists, I'm not a scientist, well, I'd like to be. They wanted to test out and kind of play with the idea of, using wearable technology and the internet, kind of remote technologies, to do scientific studies. Yeah, there are limits to this. You can't really control whether the people actually did what they said they were going to do, how they reported in terms of the start time, the end time were correct. There are ways to get around this. As they mentioned in the paper, you can maybe make them set some kind of timer. There are ways around that you can check, but you got to kind of trust that they're actually doing it. But that was the whole point. It's like, okay, are people actually going to do it? How's it going to work? What's the data going to look like? And then, they didn't even register this as a clinical trial until after the fact, because it was like a kind of little casual thing. Like, okay, let's just check it out. Let's try it out. But now that the results were quite interesting and valuable, and the people did largely adhere to the protocols, they think, okay, well, let's do this more rigorously in the future. Probably pre-register it as a clinical trial beforehand. But yeah, so don't get. I mean, I'm looking at this and thinking, what a sloppy little study this is. Like, there's so many ways this could have gone wrong. So whatever. Don't worry about that. Worry about you. You might be totally different from these 108 people. You're probably a male or a female. You're human. The people in this study were females and males, 18 and older. They could basically speak English, but they excluded so many different people from this study, right? For example, people with severe psychiatric or medical conditions that might get worsened by the study. For example, heart disease, glaucoma, history of seizures, pregnancy, psychosis, suicidality, bipolar disorder, or substance use disorder. So if you have one of these conditions, if you've got some heart problems, or you get seizures, or you're pregnant, or you have a bit of psychosis, you're bipolar, suicidal, or have a substance use disorder, then the results might be completely different. than that was reported in this study. Likewise, if you have a vision or hearing impairment severe enough that you wouldn't be able to participate in this kind of study, like you wouldn't be able to read the material or watch the videos or listen to the instruction videos, which were basically Andrew Huberman, a little video of Andrew Huberman explaining the protocols, probably very similar to the ones on YouTube that you can see from him, and little text messages saying, hey, come on, do your thing. If you can't see that or hear that, then yeah, you're out of the study. But I mean, you can still do these breathing practices and this mindfulness meditation practice yourself. But the data here might not match you. And regardless, maybe even you are like exactly one of these people. You're an 18-year-old or older human. You go to Stanford. You're an undergraduate at Stanford. You're probably in your early 20s or you're 19 or something like that. You got some money probably. You got no health conditions. Your vision and hearing is great, etc. You happen to have been in that undergraduate psychology class at Stanford where 90+% of the participants were recruited from. It sounds like it was an online class because this was going on. The recruitment was happening in June of 2020. The data collection was happening in the summer, apparently, I guess, because the collection ended, the data collection, the experiment or whatever, the 28 days ended on September 17th, 2020. But yeah, you were in that undergraduate psychology class and during the pandemic, and you're a freaking 20-year-old Stanford kid. Yeah, then this is going to be like it. So there's a lot of potential with this wearable technology and this online surveys and stuff in terms of getting a wide demographic sample. But weirdly enough, they didn't really take advantage of that here. They took everyone from a single class, minus a few people from word of mouth that were probably also kids at Stanford, and studied them. So yeah, test this out for yourself. Yeah, you might want to be careful if you have one of these conditions. You're bipolar, or you got psychosis, or you get seizures or something. I don't know. This is not medical advice. Don't sue me or something because I breathe in this way or that. But I imagine that it would actually probably help such people even more than the normal, happy, healthy people. But I don't know. Up to you. Let's look at the third breathing protocol that was used in this study, this casual little study that became a paper, the cyclic hyperventilation. This differs very greatly from the previous two breathing exercises in a couple of interesting ways. This one is inhale focused, whereas those are exhale focused. Well, the physiological sigh is certainly exhale focused. The box breathing is a balanced kind of inhale, exhale, even, 50-50. But the cyclic hyperventilation focuses on the inhale. So we know from previous studies that the exhale increases parasympathetic activity. It increases activity of the vagus nerve. It calms you down. It relaxes you. Your heart rate goes down. Your blood pressure drops. There's studies talking about all this. I might dig into some of these in the future. And you might not believe it. You might say, no, how could breathing decrease your heart rate? How can it control your blood pressure, etc., your heart rate variability? Well, it can. This specific study today did not show any differences in terms of heart rate or heart rate variability or changes in sleep, the data collected from the strap or the self-reports. So sleep and heart rate weren't really affected by this, but the breathing rate was decreased, which is basically measured indirectly by heart rate. There's something called, and this is how these fitness trackers, at least the Whoop band, tracks your breath rate. Basically, when you're sleeping, it takes that raw heart rate data, and there's a principle called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Essentially, when you exhale, your heart rate decreases, and when you inhale, your heart rate increases. This all has to do with, just basic physics and mechanics of, your diaphragm moving, and therefore your heart size getting smaller, the blood volume, etc., all changing. We don't need to get too deep into all the science, but you could just imagine it, and it starts to make sense. So yeah, exhale-based practices are going to slow down the heart rate. Makes sense, and that's exactly what this study showed. And inhale-based practices are probably going to increase the heart rate, but if done deliberately, like you're not hyperventilating because you're freaking out and it's like, ugh, but you're deliberately doing it, sort of in this Wim Hof kind of method, that might actually calm you down, weirdly enough. which was what was shown in this study as well. It did decrease anxiety and physiological arousal, etc. How do you do this cyclic hyperventilation? Well, I guess I should say it's cyclic hyperventilation with retention. So you're doing a little breath hold at the end, very Wim Hof-y. You do a few rounds of this. So one round will look like this. And it's essentially, you're doing it for 5 minutes. So the rounds don't matter, but it turns out to be, over the course of 5 minutes, you're probably going to be doing about 3 rounds. So once again, you're sitting down in a chair or lying down if you want to, setting a timer for 5 minutes, and then you inhale deeply, preferably through the nose. But if you can't, then inhale through your mouth, and then exhale by just passively letting the air out. The words they used in the study were, let it fall out from the mouth. So, quote, fall out from the mouth. So breathe in and then kind of let it fall out. Imagine your breath falling. Let it fall out. Just boom, drop it like it's hot. It actually will be hot if you touch that exhale. But yeah, you're kind of focusing on the inhale, which is probably for a second or two. Let's say about 2 seconds, and then the exhale is for about 1 second. So kind of a 2-to-1 ratio. Try to get your inhale about 2 seconds and your exhale about 1 second. But you don't need to time it. Just kind of get a feel for it. Something like that. So do 30 of those. Maybe some more inhale. I don't know. I'm not a Huberman. And then after the 30 inhale exhales, the 30 breaths or whatever, then let it all out and hold your breath for 15 seconds. That's one round. And then do it again. 30 breaths in and out, inhaling through your nose, and then passively exhaling, letting the air fall out of your mouth, focusing on the inhale, letting the exhale just drop out and getting back to the main point, which is inhale. Doing 30 breaths like that, and after the 30 breaths, exhale all your air, just drop it all out. Empty your lungs, get it out, and then hold your breath for 15 seconds. I guess this 15 seconds includes the emptying of the lungs. So empty your lungs for 15 seconds. It sort of transitions from an exhale to a hold. And once all the air is out and the 15 seconds have elapsed, then go in for the next round. Do it again. And yeah, do that for 3 rounds. You could do 4 rounds if you want. And in the case of this study, they did it for 5 minutes. At least they were told to do so. And then after 5 minutes or after the 3 rounds or 4 rounds or whatever, then just breathe normally, you're done. Once again, this cyclic hyperventilation with retention, when done deliberately, not done like it's happening to you because you're freaking out, or you're scared, or in an actual stressful environment, etc., but you're doing it deliberately as a practice, then it did decrease anxiety, improve one's mood, decrease the heart rate, all of these things, as did the other 2 breathing exercises, box breathing and the physiological sigh. But yeah, it wasn't as pronounced as the physiological sigh. But like with that, the longer one did it, the more days someone stuck to the protocol, say they did it all 28 days or they did it 22 out of 28, the more they did it, and as the time went on, so by week 2 or week 3, for example, the effects got even more obvious. The mood was improved even greater. Breath rate decreased even further. The anxiety likewise decreased. But if you want the most bang for your buck, according to the study, it's a physiological sigh. So yeah, try these 3 breathing practices out, the cyclic hyperventilation with retention, the physiological sigh, the box breathing, see which one you like, see when you like it, when it might be useful for you, when it might not be, how you feel. You might not like any of them. They actually did a little follow-up questionnaire at the end of the study, which was optional, but many of the people still did it. 90% of the people reported a positive experience of the whole monthly experiment. 10% of the people did not like it. They reported it as a negative thing. It did not work. Take into account, too, though, that not everyone was doing, actually nobody was doing more than one of these practices. Each person was doing only one of them for the 28 days. There were 108 people totally enrolled. 24 of them, 24 out of the 108, did mindful meditation. Just 24 of them. 30 of them did cyclic sighing. 21 did box breathing. and 33 did cyclic hyperventilation. So the numbers are skewed a little bit. Who were those 10%? Maybe they were all the cyclic hyperventilators. That sounds a bit more stressful. Or maybe they were the mindful meditators, or maybe it was the person just mismatched with the breathing pattern that is best for them, and they got one that stresses them out and they just didn't like it. So yeah, in this case, you can do all 4 of these yourself. You don't have to stick to just one of them. You can play around with each of them. You can do them all on the same day, whatever. This isn't a freaking controlled scientific study. And you might be wondering, why the heck were there 33 doing the cyclic hyperventilation with retention and only 21 doing box breathing? And then there's 30 doing cyclic sighing, 24 mindful meditators. What is going on here? Why didn't they make the numbers kind of more evened out? I mean, they can control this, right? Well, basically what happened is after they sent out the Whoop straps to each of the people, they got the Whoop strap for free. They got the year subscription for free. That's cool. That's probably a large part of why they were doing it. And, Andrew Huberman was kind of running the thing. So like, ooh, I get to play with Huberman. How it turned out is they found out that a lot of these people were living in the same house. They were family members. So what do you do when you got 4 out of the 108 people all basically being brothers and sisters and fathers and their family? They're living in the same house. Like, oh my God, this doesn't seem very scientific. How are we going to account for this? And what they would do when they found out that certain people were in the same family or living in the same house, they would assign them all to the same protocol. So say this family of 3, they're all doing cyclic hyperventilation. That's probably not the family you want to be in. A bunch of hyperventilators together as a family. Now, you can do it separately, but you're still like living together. I'd probably much rather be in the family of cyclic sighers. But yeah, it sounds like the reason those numbers are higher is because they had to have the whole family kind of doing the same exercise. I don't know why they had to have that, but yeah, that's what made sense to them. So that's why there's more people doing the cyclic hyperventilation and cyclic sighing, is because they had to kind of account for this oopsie, people living together. Because I guess you could imagine what one person's doing this one, the other person's doing the other one. They might talk about it. It might influence each other. They might actually kind of practice it. Oh, I want to try yours. I want to try yours. And I think it's probably start getting sloppy. But it's already a pretty sloppy thing to start off with. I mean, like, you're just trusting these people that they did it, and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and then they just like click a number. Oh, how do you feel? 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Ooh, I feel great. I feel not great, etc. Yeah, there's limits to that. But anyway, that's why the numbers are the way they are. But like I said, there's no rules for yourself. Just do it however the heck you want. You don't have to fill out any survey. You don't have to report nothing. You just do it however you want, which could potentially be the opposite of what these people did. I mean, Huberman and friends just assumed that these people had actually completed the breathing protocol if they had filled out the pre and post measure survey for the day. Okay, so I feel before, this is how I feel afterwards. This is how it's going. This is how it's going. And probably they did. I mean, I do sometimes get those surveys and like, you get some free Amazon gift card, and it's like, for me, it's like all in Japanese. I'm like, I don't even know what the heck this is saying. So I'm just like, click, completely dummy data, but I get the free stuff. Yeah, if you're lazy or you just don't understand it or whatever, you don't feel like breathing, doing the breathing exercises. Yeah, there's the chance of people just, clicking random buttons. People do that. It's one of the limits of these surveys. Especially when no one's watching you do it. No one's even checking if you are actually doing the breathing. It's just like, okay, you did the survey. You must have done the breathing. Okay. You don't got to do that. Luckily, it does not sound fun. Probably adds to the stress of the whole experience. That might account for the 10% who did not like it. They might just not like surveys. But I mean, what else can you do when it's in the middle of this societal-wide manic episode called the COVID-19 pandemic? You have to resort to these, remote data collection methods using wearables and surveys, etc. Which is sort of, like I said, that's part of what they were doing. They're kind of thinking, how can we do studies during pandemics? How can we do things totally remote? And are people actually going to do it during these crazy COVID times? As it turns out, people largely did do it. And the methods did work. And so they've mentioned in this paper, there are some follow-up studies we would like to do. We would like to see how these breathing patterns affect particular brain regions, and then check the vagus nerve activity and heart rate variability and see how all that lines up. The brain regions with the vagus nerve, with the heart. That's pretty cool. So that's something they're going to think about doing in the future, as well as some other studies that they mentioned. So I found the data about the families. Basically, 7 households had 2 participants, and 1 household had 3. So that means 17 out of the 108 people were living with at least one other person. That's 15.7% of the sample size. And the sample size is not very huge, which they admitted for each breathing protocol or mindfulness meditation exercise anyway, right? There was no more than 33 people sampled for each, and there's as low as 21 for the box breathing. So that's not a huge sample size, but like I said, this is a little casual study that became a clinical trial after the fact, and it's the beginning of something more rigorous and bigger. But you don't got to worry about that. Just do your thing. So we talked about these 3 breathing exercises, and we talked about this mindful meditation practice and how the breathing exercises, these deliberate breathing protocols, were more beneficial in terms of reducing anxiety and physiological arousal and increasing calm and mood, etc., more so than the mindful meditation. But the mindful meditation was also quite effective. And of the 3 breathing practices, the physiological sigh was most powerful. I'd like to add in one more exercise. Now looking at how this mindful meditation practice was, what kind of meditation it was, is this very focus-based thing where you're focusing in, lasering in, basically narrowing your eyes inward, right into the center of your face, like a freaking cyclops, and you're supposed to laser beam that and expect to calm down. It sounds like a focus kind of exercise, a kind of focus meditation, which is my guess when you're moving your eyes inward and holding them there and kind of holding it and controlling it and make, yeah, that's probably gonna be less calming and relaxing than a breathing practice. So maybe you can try a more open awareness meditation where you just let your attention drift. Sometimes it's up between your eyes. Sometimes it's down on your toes. Sometimes it's at your breath. Sometimes you're thinking about lunch. And just kind of watch yourself wander around and let it go. Let it go. Don't control it. Kind of widen the lens. Float around. Roam around. That might have a different effect. You don't have to measure the results. You don't have to check your heart rate. You don't have to check your breath rate or write a diary entry afterwards, aka your version of a survey. But it might help. Maybe if you do have access to a smartwatch, a wearable that tracks these things, you can see how is my sleep changing? How is my heart rate, my HRV changing, etc. In the case of this study, the HRV, the heart rate, the sleep, all tracked by the wearable, the raw data from the Whoop band, but also from the self-reported surveys. There was no statistically significant difference between these different exercises or just flat out alone. Did they even change the heart? Not really. But maybe it changes yours. Maybe it doesn't improve your sleep. So play around with this. Play around with these 3 breathing exercises. Play around with the mindful meditation exercise where you focus your attention between your eyes, or you could do a more open awareness one where you're floating around, or you can do whatever you want and see how you feel. You can create your own breathing exercises. I mean, the real difference is the variables in this whole thing is like, how long do you inhale? How long do you exhale? How long do you hold? And you play around with that number. You can even it out, keep it even with the box breathing. You can exaggerate the exhale with the physiological sigh. You could exaggerate the inhale with the cyclic hyperventilation, or you could do something else, like say like the 4-7-8 breath that Andrew Weil is a proponent of, where you are, emphasizing the exhale, 8 seconds out, 4 seconds in, 7 seconds hold. It's a weird funky pattern, 4-7-8. The box is like 4444 or 8888 or something, but here we got 478. And you can totally change those numbers. I don't know, make something crazy like 1, 12, 16. I don't know, whatever, find some number that works. That's really the difference between these things. One of the big differences is, what are these numbers? What's the ratio between the inhale, exhale, and the hold? And then maybe the other one is the intensity. How much do you inhale? With the physiological side there, you're getting a full inhale, really filling up your lungs like, And with the box breathing, I don't know, maybe a little bit less, maybe similar, I don't know. But it's more even. There's a weird long breath hold at the end of the hyperventilation Wim Hof thingy. That's not present in the other one. So, yeah, play around with the hold in terms of seconds and intensity. How much do you get in? How much do you get out? How long do you hold? And then, the duration, the seconds, time you spend on each phase of this. So we're given 3 of them here, but you can customize your own. There are thousands of different ones you could do. Likewise with the meditation, with the mindfulness exercise. Yeah, these don't traditionally focus on specific breathing patterns. It's more about the awareness, but you can mix these together. You can do do the mindful meditation while counting your breaths. Create your own little exercise. See how that feels. There are no rules when it comes to your own body. Yeah, there are certain ways you're going to react, but in terms of experimentation, there are no rules. You'll find out the facts. You'll find out the algorithms by which your body and brain run, but how else are you going to find out except for by experimenting? And the more open you are in the beginning, playing around with different combinations of inhales, exhales, and breath holds, and focusedness and attention, directed attention versus wanderingness, that's going to change the whole thing. Just as we can sort of bounce back and forth between the inhale and the exhale and the hold in between, maybe we could do something similar with the mindfulness thing. We could bounce between this focused attention, laser beam between the eyes or the genitals or the belly button or something, or some sound, some mantra, and then widening out the lens and relaxing your attention. It's gone boom, boom, 10, 4, 3, 4, 7, 8, 4, 4, 4, 4, I don't know. The same thing we're doing with the breath, we could do with our attention. And I guess if there is an equivalent, then the inhale will be the focus and the exhale will be the relaxing, the wandering, the open awareness. But regardless of how you do it, if you're like these people in the study, then whatever you do, any kind of meditation, any kind of mindfulness meditation or breathwork practice, you're probably going to feel better. Not necessarily, but on average, most people feel better by doing one of these. If it's more exhale focused, the odds are higher that, you're going to feel even more calm and relaxed, which you can check from your subjective experience, but also check your wearable data if you have that. But even the inhale-based ones, that could help if done deliberately. And if you don't want to play around with the breath, just meditate. Don't worry about these numbers, just do something and do what feels right. This paper by Huberman and Spiegel and friends, also, it cites 62 other papers, 62 other studies, some of which I want to get into later, but I don't have time today, nor do you, right? But let's kind of briefly talk about some of the results from some of those studies. Not to name them specifically, you can go to the paper and find it yourself. But one feature of some of these studies is it mentions how slowing down the breathing rate, breathing in a slower way, long inhales or long exhales, that's going to help balance out the CO2 and oxygen. And with that balance of chemicals, you're going to feel balance in your body and mind. It's been shown that slow breathing improves quality of life for people with asthma. It decreases their need for inhalers. So there's the slow breathing. And all these practices have been done for centuries in all kinds of ancient parts of the world, India and China and beyond. And also the nasal breathing in through your nose has been studied, and that has shown to positively impact the amygdala and the hippocampus, these sort of emotional centers, limbic structures, as well as increasing, so kind of calming those parts down, and then increasing activity in the prefrontal cortex that helps calm down these limbic structures, these more emotional, reactive parts of ourselves. So, yeah, breathing in through your nose is going to calm you down and help give you more emotional regulation, control over your life. And control is another aspect of this that they did mention in this paper, is maybe one of the reasons why these breathing exercises worked better than the mindful meditation one is because people had more control in that case. They were controlling their breath. They were timing it themselves, like 4, 4, 4, 4. I'm doing it. I got this. I'm me. And when you feel in control, your anxiety decreases. You feel better. It calms you down. So maybe there's other ways you can feel more in control of your life. Yeah, one is through deliberate breathing protocols, but there are lots of other ways too that don't involve the breath. Find those. But yeah, slow expiration, breathing out slowly, breathing in through your nose, perhaps even breathing out through your nose, but especially breathing in through your nose. That'll calm you down. That'll reduce your anxiety. That'll improve your mood. Help give you a little bit more control of your thoughts and your feelings and actions. But if you just want to increase your awareness of the present moment, if you want to increase your presence, you want to, tap into the power of now, then maybe the mindfulness meditation is the best thing for you. But if you want to just be calmer and reduce your heart rate, etc., then maybe it's a physiological sigh or the box breathing or even the cyclic hyperventilation. See which one it is for you. Another reason they mentioned why these breathing practices might have been more effective is they act faster. This controlled breathing, the effects from that you feel almost immediately or more quickly. You feel better during the exercise. And not to say you don't feel better during the mindfulness meditation, but the breath is just more powerful, it seems. So when you feel better and the results are the reward is kind of quick, you're going to be more motivated to keep doing it. And you're probably more likely to keep doing it over the 28 days or however many days you want to do it. It's interesting how their hypothesis basically turned out right. They thought that the breathing interventions would be more effective in reducing anxiety and regulating physiology than the mindfulness meditation, and that was in fact the case, shown by the surveys and the breath rate data collected by the Whoop Band. I mean, we already know from the military, from the Navy SEALs, that the box breathing is great for regulating your stress and improving your performance and calming you down and keeping you, being able to do your job. We know that. And we know that hyperventilating, when it's sort of a chronic problem, when it just happens on its own, that does lead to sort of chronic stress and anxiety. But when done more deliberately in a controlled way, that does have therapeutic effects. We know that the inhale increases heart rate and exhales decrease heart rate. This is this phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and basically how these wearables such as Whoop and Fitbit, etc., calculate your breath rate. Because you're thinking, how the heck do they know the breath rate? There's no thing hooked up to my mouth or nose or whatever. Like I said, when you're sleeping specifically, they check your heart rate, and when the heart rate goes down or goes up, that's directly connected to the inhales and the exhales and the breath rate. So the fewer breaths, the lower the heart rate. The more the breaths, the higher the heart rate. And not surprisingly, when you sleep, you're not breathing as frequently. You might only be breathing, 6 times or 8 times per minute, or really depends on the person, but it's going to be less than in your waking life, unless you're a yogi or, experienced meditator or even novice meditator. We know that the exhale reduces anxiety and improves your mood. And that's why they also hypothesized in this paper, and they turned out to be right, that the physiological sigh, the cyclic sighing, would, have more powerful psychological and physiological effects than the box breathing or the cyclic hyperventilating. That was indeed the case, which makes sense because it's more exhale focused. The exhale to inhale ratio is higher. And don't feel bad if you can't keep it up for 28 days. And I'm not saying you even have to do this, but I think I will. Try to do this for 28 days for 5 minutes a day and see how I feel. The people in the study didn't even do it for 28 days. So, for example, the mindfulness meditation group, they completed on average 17 of the 28 days. And the breathwork participants completed a little bit more, on average 19 out of the 28 days. So, yeah, most people did not do it every day. They did it between 17 to 20 days out of the 28. Yet, if you look at the standard deviation, some people did it for only a few days, perhaps. They didn't do it much at all, and others did it every day. But on average, 17.71 for the mindfulness meditators and 19.61 out of the 28 days for the breathwork participants. I didn't see any data on the differences between the different breathing practices, but yeah. Main point is you don't got to do it every day, but try your best. The more you can do it, the more consistently you can do it, and the more you can do it over time, regardless of whatever exercise you're doing, the results are going to be better. The effects are going to be even better, at least according to the study. You want to decrease your breathing rate, you want to increase your calm, do any of these. The mindfulness meditation, the box breathing, the physiological sighing, the hyperventilating with the pause, or all of the above. There was a reduction in respiratory rate for all of these groups. But like I said, most pronounced in the physiological sigh, in the exhale. Your heart rate variability and your heart rate and sleep might also be improved, but not necessarily. This study couldn't prove or show any of that. Let's talk a little bit about this Whoop band real quickly, because that was a big motivating factor in this study. Whoop provided these wristbands for free to these participants, so in a way, they're kind of like a sponsor. And Andrew Huberman is on their advisory board. He wasn't at the time of the study, but he did become an advisor to Whoop in June of 2022. About 6 months before the actual report was published. And presumably during the writing of the paper, it is stated at the end of the paper that is when he became an advisor. After the study, before the publication. Anyway, Huberman has an interest in this, but I don't think he's trying to sell the Whoop strap or trying to promote it. Maybe he is. I don't think he's trying to promote or sell the physiological sigh, and there's nothing to sell. It's a free behavioral protocol, like anyone can do it. There's nothing to sell. I don't see why it would benefit him if you do more physiological sighing, except for probably making the world a calmer, a happier place, which is sort of better for everybody. Anyway, I don't think there's any kind of hidden agenda in this paper, but you do have to always go into these papers and find out who is funding it, what kind of financial or whatever interests do these guys have. There's always going to be a little bit of that. But you got to be careful. In the case of this paper by Huberman and Stanford team, seems okay, but you never really know. But yeah, still say whoop, whoop, whoop throughout the study. And the participants did get a free Whoop band, which is not cheap. So it's kind of like a little promotional activity in a way. But it's also just, how else are you going to do this during the pandemic? How it works is the band is, the hardware itself is very, very cheap, essentially free sometimes. Sometimes the company just gives it away for free, and they just charge you a monthly subscription, about $239 a year at this point, $30 a month, and that gives you access to the whole thing. If you don't pay that subscription, then the band is essentially useless. It doesn't do anything. But the good thing is you don't got to focus on buying the hardware or the hardware going out of date or anything. So when And now this is starting to sound like a little advertisement. I'm pushing them harder than the paper itself did. Now, I've never used the thing, but I've been learning about it. When your watch gets older, they make a new one. They will send you a new one, the latest model for free, as long as you're paying for the subscription. Then the hardware is sort of part of the package, sort of set fee. And they are a huge, pretty big company now. They're the largest standalone wearables company. You might think, what? They're the biggest? What about Apple Watch? What about Fitbit? What about Aura? Yeah, these are also very big, but Aura is a little bit smaller than them. It's this Finnish biotech company, yeah. And Fitbit was bought out by Google in 2021, and Apple Watch is obviously Apple. These are not standalone companies. Fitbit is part of Google. Apple Watch is part of Apple. Standalone, just focusing on the wearables, nothing else. Search engines and YouTube and phones and junk. Nah, yeah, they're currently the biggest. Not important information probably for you, but interesting. It was founded by a guy named Will Ahmed in Boston, and it still is a Boston-based company. He founded it back in 2012 when he was an undergrad at Harvard. Now it's over 10 years later, so things didn't take off immediately, but yeah, it is now being used by various athletes. For example, Michael Phelps and LeBron James. And you? I don't know if you're an athlete, but yeah, that's Whoop. Interesting thing. Something I want to try. I also like that it has no screen. It's just a freaking band. It's just collecting the data. What I did not like about my Fitbit, and which you may or may not like about your Apple Watch, but you're an Apple guy, you probably like your screen, is there's no screen. There's no screen. It's just a freaking band. It's just the collector. That's what I want. I did not like checking that screen. I didn't like checking the app either, though. So that's still a problem or positive feature of this, depending on how you look at it, is you're going to be like checking your data, checking. When I lost I was out drinking one night way back then, a year ago or something, and I lost my Fitbit. The strap, I got some cheapy little replacement strap off Amazon, probably made in China. It was like $10. The strap kind of busted when I was out dancing around or whatever, and I lost it. I was actually kind of happy because it was like I was like liberated from that freaking screen data tracker. I could sleep naked, fully naked again. But yeah, no screen. So that is something I do like about Whoop. I wish there were more technologies, more companies doing the screenless data tracking. I don't know if I want the chip under my skin, but I might want that more than the freaking Apple Watch. Yeah, this is going to be a recurring theme, probably upcoming in this podcast, is screens. If you haven't noticed yet, I am anti-screen. I do not like them. I want to close these windows. I want to close the screens in our life. That's actually an episode I want to talk about that today more, but I wanted to overcome this challenge, in the spirit of Daniele Scuteri, episode 79, shout out to him, of embracing and jumping into facing challenges, not running away from them. And this challenge was today for me to go through this scientific paper, very well written, very easy to read, written by a great communicator, Andrew Huberman, and I guess along with a couple of his friends. They're at Stanford School of Medicine. But yeah, trying to look through this and talk about it. And I do apologize for this not being as concise or as organized as I would like it to be. But if I want to do more of this in the future and get better at this, at reading these papers and reorganizing them and spitting them out and talking about them, I got to spit out a little junky, vomit-like episode like today. But I'm sure you got something from this. You learned about these different breathing practices. You learned a little bit about the science. You learned about Whoop. Sponsored by Whoop. No, not. Sort of the limits of these papers, of these supposedly scientific studies. There's lots of gaps and loopholes and ways for these studies to go wrong, especially when they're remote studies and it's involved in self-reporting, and there's a lot of trust involved. And we talked about sample size. We want a larger sample size if we're going to be focusing on other people's nervous systems that are not our own. But even with this sample size getting larger and larger, what about you? That N of 1. Look at that one. Look at the data from the other people, but look at yourself and think, wow. I mean, especially if you're someone who would be excluded from a lot of these studies. Like I said, you have some sort of health, or mental health, or physical health condition where you're just disqualified. I mean, say someone with bipolar disorder, or someone with some really chronic stress, they're going to react differently to a lot of these things, including foods, but including behaviors like breathing and eye movements, etc. So yeah, take care of your health. Don't do anything dangerous. Listen to yourself. Listen to your system. But maybe the only way to learn about your body is through doing your own experiments. And there's limitless. There are no rules on what you can or cannot do. I guess there are technically. You probably shouldn't be like testing how long can I stay naked in the city park. How much spit can I cover in a grandma's face? Come on, what are you doing that for? That's not even helpful. Yeah, there are limits. But yeah, use your common sense. Have fun with this. I probably missed a lot of parts of the study, and I probably repeated other parts a billion times. This is a whole new ballpark ocean I'm jumping into. I was going to put this off and like study this more and more and more, but I've been studying it, I've been looking at it, I've been reading and highlighting it and making notes, and it's not easy, but I'm glad I did it. I hope some of it helped. I hope you find the right breathing pattern or meditation technique for yourself. And even if you don't find the right one, just do any of them. It should help. And you don't need a freaking Whoop. You don't need a Fitbit. You've got your own direct feedback from your body. But not everyone does, actually. Another part of this study, you're like, dude, I thought we were closing it off. We are. Another part of this paper, they talked about interoception. So interoception is another way to get this information, to get this data. People who are really tapped into their senses and they can process all the visceral stimuli and the way their heart is, the way their body and brain are reacting to their sensory environment, their sweat and their heart pounding and their gastrointestinal comfort or discomfort and muscle tension and all that stuff. You can feel it. I can feel it. I have a lot of interoception. Some people say it's bad. Some people say it's good. I guess the good side of interoception is you get this immediate, quick feedback from your behaviors and from your environment. You're like, oh, this feels bad. Oh, this feels good. This speeds up my heart. This slows down my heart rate. This gets me high. This gives me brain fog. This hurts my tummy. This one makes me feel good. So, and for me, like, I think my interoception is like crazy high. So it can be stressful. It can cause a bit of anxiety because when you get a little bit of change, a little bit of pain, whatever, you notice everything. You're like, what is that? What is that? So that can sort of start a downward spiral of, get you freaking out. Like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Increase the arousal, not calm you down. You're probably going to be less calm if you have a lot of interoception. But the cool thing about it is because you get that feedback, it's sort of the golden side of this coin. If you use this awareness, you can change your behavior and change your inputs, what you're putting in your mouth or your eyes or whatever, the way you breathe, and thereby by changing your behavior, changing your environment or your food or drugs or whatever, you can reduce the physiological stress and start to feel more calm, start to feel better, or maybe you want to get amped up, and you have like a window of perception into your system. And sometimes it's like, whoa, I don't like what's going on. But if you learn how to steer that ship, which is sort of what this podcast is about, then you can get a greater sense of control and ability to regulate stress, to reduce anxiety, to increase calm and focus and creativity and productivity and all these things. And now looking back on it, maybe it's because of my high level of interoception. Maybe that's part of why I started this podcast in the first place, because I noticed, everything, every food, every drug, everything I see and smell and hear affects me. I get this feedback from it. I do worry sometimes because it is tied to things like anxiety, even some mental health conditions like ADHD and bipolar, etc. I think I'm fine, but if you want to increase your interoception, and this is what they talked about in this paper, not that they studied it, but they were citing other studies that looked at it, is you can use the breath and you can use mindfulness techniques like this one we talked about today of looking into that third eye, closing your eyes and focusing in on that space between your eyes and your forehead, or doing things like box breathing or the physiological sigh, or hyperventilating deliberately with a little pause at the end, or there's a bunch of other ones, I imagine. Do these and keep doing them, and you will likely regain awareness of your internal world, your sensations and feelings throughout your body and mind. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, when we do that, when we regain this interoception, yeah, it's a little bit scary. It can make you a little bit sensitive. It can increase anxiety when, these alarm buttons go off, when there's a bit of pain or some kind of problem, or, something unsettling happening within. But it also allows you to regain control over that ship and to change your behaviors and change what you put in your body and mind, and your eyes and your ears, and change your environment, change your relationships, change your actions to feel better. And so it's like a self-feeding process. You get this biofeedback, this information about what you're doing, whether it feels good or whether it feels bad. And you'll naturally start doing the things that make you feel good, that make your heart beat smoothly and slowly, make your gut feel nice, your brain, your skin, your sweat, your everything. When that's all running well, and you can check and you can see it, it's like bam, bam, immediate feedback. You're going to start doing things that make your heart and make your gut and make your brain and make your everything feel good. And what things do that? Well, things are generally healthy. So it's actually pretty sweet to be able to tap back into that interoception, and the breath and the mindfulness practices can help get you there. Studies, but not this one, have shown that long-term meditators have more interoception, more perception of the inside. So if that's what you want, then meditate. Anyway, main point is you don't need to watch necessarily. If you're someone who has a lot of interoception, you can sort of see how you feel afterwards. Like, oh, that calms me down. Oh, that feels nice. That feels bad, and you could feel it viscerally, like in your insides, in your body and brain, top to bottom. Then that is the best data. But if you're not one of these people, if you're a bit more disembodied, which is, I guess, connected to other problems, less of this mania kind of stuff, this high energy stuff like, I don't know, ADHD and bipolar, anxiety disorders and whatnot, and more like PTSD or depression or something, then yeah, maybe these fitness trackers, these wearables might help. Which also is interesting because maybe some of these people in the study, they had different levels of interoception abilities, or curses, or however you want to look at it. So that might have also skewed the way they did the subjective surveys at the end, or before the whole study, after the whole study, before each exercise each day, all of that. I didn't get too much into the actual surveys because that's probably the most boring part for you. But yeah, they were given a short questionnaire before the whole thing, before the 28 days, and then once again after the 28 days. One was about sleep-related impairment. There were 8 questions using a Likert scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all, 5 being very much. It was just that. And they added up the scores, and boom, boom, boom. And then the other one was called the State Trait Anxiety Inventory. And that was composed of 2 parts, each with 20 items, 20 questions. So I guess 40 questions in total. So they did these 8 questions, and then the 40 questions related to anxiety and related to sleep, once before the 28 days and once after the 28 days. And then during the whole thing, they were collecting the Whoop data, which was calculating, resting heart rate and HRV and sleep and all that, sleep score and sleep efficiency and hours of sleep and deep sleep. But like I said, the sleep wasn't much affected by these breathing exercises or the mindfulness meditation. And then each day that they did the assigned 5-minute exercise, they completed 2 questionnaires, before and after. So I guess it's 4 questionnaires, 2 before, 2 after. One was the State Anxiety Inventory, and the other one was called the Positive and Negative Affect Schedule. There was instructional videos pre-recorded by Andrew Huberman on the breathing exercises, and they received these videos a few days, 3 to 5 days before the whole study. And then they got these daily text messages, bugging them, telling them to, do the exercises and do the pre and post assessments. Once again, these little questionnaires of how they feel. Oh, I feel great. I don't feel so great. That kind of thing. 24 of these people did the mindfulness meditation. 84 of them did the breathing treatments. 30 for the physiological sigh. 21 box breathing, and 33 hyperventilating. Their names and information was not attached to the data because they were given a separate email address from Stanford that was connected to their Whoop app. And yeah, that's how they checked the data. I guess in retrospect, they could probably figure out who was who, but it's sort of anonymous unless the participant used their own email address, which they had the option to do so. I'm probably getting way too far into the details of all this, but it's what I'm doing. It's what it is. Who funded this work? Yeah, partly we mentioned Whoop kind of has interest in this. They gave the Whoop bands out and gave the free year subscription to the service. I guess the first month was a study and the other 11 months were do what you want. There's this guy named Victor Koo and Winnie Koo, not Winnie the Pooh. I don't know who they are, but looks like these rich Chinese people. They're probably related or married or something. I try to look them up. This Victor guy seems quite interesting. He has this company called Tianren Culture, which is trying to like connect the species together and embrace this interplanetary communication and wellness, make things less human-centered and more nature-centered, which is completely in line with my vibes and what I'm looking to do. So, great stuff. He founded a Chinese kind of social media company back in the day called Youku, which has been called the YouTube of China. Anyway, that merged with another company, Tudo. I don't know. Those Chinese companies. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that. You can look these people up if you want. Another party involved in this was the Stanford School of Medicine. Obviously, all the people writing the paper and doing the research, they were all from there, different departments. And Huberman got this award from the Stanford School of Medicine called the Stanford School of Medicine Discovery Innovation Award. And that's given to, quote, support early stage research that could exponentially accelerate our understanding of human biology and our ability to predict, prevent, and cure disease, end quotation. So that's pretty cool stuff. And then Whoop was not involved in the design or analysis of the study. They just gave the Whoop bands out, etc. But yeah, they are involved. But not in your study, unless you already got one. Unless you already got one of those Whoopers. Whoopity-doop. Who cares? I'm just happy that this study rewoke me to, one, my third eye. Forgot I had one of those. And then, yeah, once again, the effects of the inhale and the exhale and the hold and how we can combine these in different ways, different durations and intensities to produce different physiological and psychological effects. It also made me realize that, yeah, these scientific studies and reports are not perfect. There are gaps and flaws in them. And also reawoke within me, reminded me of the power of, studying myself, doing experiments on myself. Safely, of course. But not too safely. You do got to stretch your boundaries here and there and get a little uncomfortable like I am today with this freaky new episode thing. Anyway, hope you're good. I hope this helps. Try these out. There's a little button at the bottom of the episode show notes, every episode, where it lets you send me a text message. Feel free to send me a text message. I will receive that. I hope I can reply. I'm not sure if I can, but if not, you can find me on LinkedIn, type in Michael Waite, or I don't know. I don't want to tell you my email. I'll tell you it. My email is michael@brainshaman.com. If you're a freaking spammer, I'm going to spam you back. No. Yeah, feel free to email me or text me and tell me what worked for you, how you feel. Also, if there's certain episodes or things you want to learn about or talk about or guests that I'll try to get on, or some complaints. Hey, Mike, learn how to shut the heck up. This is the worst episode experience time of my life. Get away from me. Speaking of emails, one of the cool things about these scientific academic papers is that they provide the email addresses for a couple of the authors. In this case, we are lucky. We got the emails for Andrew Huberman and David Spiegel. Should I say them? Well, they're available in the paper right there at the front. Boom, front page. We got David Spiegel, dspiegel at stanford.edu. He loves the spam. No, I'm kidding. Don't do it. If you have a question about this paper, about this work, he may or may not answer, but the email's there. That's why it's there for that kind of contact. And Andrew Huberman's email is adh1 at stanford.edu. I don't think he probably wants to hear your email, but yeah, send him a little something, like, hey, how are you? Anyway, that's there for you. And then we got Mikey Waite, Michael at brainshaman.com. See you soon. Love you. Let's get it on with the breath and the mind.